I'm Noah Abrams, and welcome to The Days Between, the show where I talk to my friends, people I admire, and people I want to better understand about success, failure, happiness, and misery, as well as all the other elements that make up a life well lived. Along the way, we'll look at mental, spiritual, and physical health, and when life didn't go as planned, the steps they took to get themselves from A to B and beyond. This week, I'm speaking with Ethan Suplee. As an actor, Ethan found success almost instantly and has gone on to appear in dozens of films and television shows over the span of his 3 decades in Hollywood. Despite having achieved what many dream of early in his career, Ethan's private struggle with his weight, his relationship with food, and what he calls his mental garbage has at times dominated his personal narrative. A seemingly well-meaning but misplaced attempt to course correct at the young age of 5 set him on a roller coaster of weight loss and weight gain that not only took a physical toll, but a mental and emotional one as well. In 2017, a short but impactful TED Talk, while simple in message, radically changed Ethan's mindset and approach to food and nutrition. Armed with this practical information, and in combination with the same work ethic that he has applied professionally, Ethan has now reached a level of physical well-being that can only be described as inspiring. While his story is unique, the struggle for self-acceptance and the desire to change one's appearance is not. Every day, people attempt to navigate the road to physical health, having to sidestep confusing and contradictory information, dead-end diets, and miracle cures. Through the course of our conversation, we discuss the importance of small goals, killing your clone, and the effect that words, however well-intentioned, can have on shaping a person's destiny. Everyone is different, and every body is different. But as Ethan has shown, through daily practice, we all have the ability to transform ourselves, and the long-term positive effect of that transformation can be profound. Please enjoy Ethan Suplee on The Days Between. So I'm here in Los Angeles, California with Ethan Suplee. You were born in New York. You grew up out here. What brought your family to Los Angeles?
My parents were like theater actors in New York, and they were just kind of over that when I was born as a lifestyle for them. They, most people move out here to continue acting. They moved out here just to have a different life altogether.
Are you an only child?
No, I have a little sister. She was born here, but we were both raised here.
I've heard you tell a story about going to visit your grandparents in Vermont and that being a somewhat traumatic experience.
It's a very odd thing to wrap my head around. It feels like it was a traumatic experience to me. I don't know that they're wrong necessarily. So I go out, I'm 5. I'm sent to have my summer with them in Vermont. And they were kind of visually and noticeably repulsed by how much weight they said I'd gained since the last time I'd seen them. When I look at pictures of myself, I am not an obese 5-year-old. I'm chunky, I would say. And so it then...
Which is not uncommon for 5-year-olds.
No, I mean, parents will be aware that kids can sometimes grow wide and then tall and wide and tall. So it's this cycle. I was certainly chubby, but I wasn't inactive. This was, I don't think when I was 5 years old, I wasn't aware of video games or anything like that. We had a TV, but I wasn't glued to it at that point. I would go to Vermont and spend time outside. My favorite food was lasagna. My grandfather was from Sicily and he knew how to cook and he would make lasagna and he made lasagna to welcome me to Vermont. And sitting down at the table to dinner, I had the piece that they portioned out for me. And then I went for a second helping, which was what I always did. And I was rebuffed and told, no, you don't get more. You're fat. We're gonna fix this problem and send you back to LA, kind of solved. The next day in the morning, I was made to undress and get weighed. And that was a very weird experience that I didn't like. And then I was made to go on a walk with them down to the end of the street, which was a mile there and back. I don't think about that and think these were evil people, or bad people. I think for me, much of the problems in the world are somebody making some idea of what is objectively right or wrong for somebody else and trying to see that through with force or however they do it, you know? So I'm very much disinterested in doing that, but I understand the compulsion to do that. You know, people have beliefs, and we could attach this to anything, that there's some moral structure that is correct outside of what's being determined for themselves. And then they try to institute it and they try to get others to do what they think is right. And so that being done to me at 5, like if I'd been playing with knives and I loved playing with knives and they'd stop me, would I sit here and judge them for it? No, I'd go like, that makes sense to me. So it makes sense to me what they were doing. I just don't think it had the effect that they intended.
As a 5-year-old, how did that feel?
It felt awful. Like it really changed my world. My world went from, I had no idea of self at that point. I had never thought about it before. I wasn't really aware of my body at all. I just didn't think about it. And so my first ideas about self were that I was wrong, or there was something wrong with me, or something that needed to be corrected. I don't think I've still shaken this. You know, I still have weird mental garbage and baggage tied up with those ideas that I developed at a very early age. I mean, I started sneaking food that night. When I cleared the table, I was eating food off their plates in an act of rebellion, but also just like, I didn't get what I wanted. I want more, you know? I think it was a little bit an act of defiance, certainly. And it was also just like, I was compelled to eat more at that point. Like, and I had never thought about it in those terms. I just ate what I wanted to eat. And then when I was done, I was done. And I remember at that moment, it was like, I'm going to get this food one way or the other.
And you mentioned you were active, but after that point, what was your view of physical activity?
I'm sure I was still active after that. I rode bikes and I was outside playing with my friends, but the authoritarian activities, like you must go do some activity, I was not interested in. And that put kind of a pall a little bit on other activities, certainly, which made me shy away from it a bit.
What was your parents' response?
Up until that point, my parents had never broached this subject with me. And so kind of moving forward with my parents, once that was out in the air, it was like, oh yeah, we're going to do diets. And so there were just a string of diets through my childhood from then on.
When you say we, meaning you or the whole family?
Well, it would be presented as though a lot of the time the family is now going to eat this way, but it was really, you know, you'd see some other stuff in the house that was maybe kept in shelves too high for me to get to, where it's like, well, if we're eating this way, why is that stuff there? Oh, don't worry about that stuff. You know, maybe my dad's eating that or something. So the family wasn't ever really on board with the different diets that were instituted. They were all focused at some change in me.
Were your parents heavy?
No.
Was your sister?
No.
When you say it was a subject to be broached, was this a concern they had before you went to your grandparents?
I suspect it was. They had never brought it up to me, but it was certainly brought up once I was back.
So you start dieting at 5.
Yeah.
When did that stop?
I mean, it really stopped when I was 16 or 17 and I got a car and I had my own money from working. It was just like, you know, I'm in my car now. Like I'm not on a diet. I can go to the fast food place, you know?
Well, you said, I quote, I was on diets from 5 until I told my parents to fuck off at 14.
Yeah. I mean, 14, but really at 14, I was a nightmare.
Nightmare how?
I got in trouble. I was arrested. I started to mess around with drugs and alcohol. I just stopped going to school. Like I was a problem for them at 14. I think at 14, I was bigger than my dad. So it was like this idea of like, what force, like this whole thing about force and you having power is a bit of a charade now, because you can tell me what to do, but you can't actually make me do it.
You mentioned you're getting arrested. You're experimenting with drugs at 14. Were you angry?
Yeah, I was always angry.
Did anyone stop and say, let's figure out what the root cause of this is instead of just letting it go? Or was there any kind of conversation around that?
Lots. But I was an unwilling participant at that point. When I realized that, like, I don't think they were going to institutionalize me. And they just had, the minute I recognized, like, their power is, you know, telling me to do stuff that they can't physically force me to do anymore. So I kind of just was like, did whatever I wanted to do at that point.
Tell me a little bit about the drugs.
Whatever discomfort I felt in myself were alleviated with drugs and alcohol. Could just detach from these mental discomforts for the time that I was intoxicated. I didn't have inhibitions, and I didn't have that loathing for myself that I had otherwise. So that's why they were appealing.
And then at what point did acting come into the equation?
16.
And how did that happen?
I'd gone to school with an actor, and I was I'd actually been to work with him a couple of times, just hanging out, and was fascinated by, like, the fact that his job was playing make-believe and, like, didn't seem like real work to me. Like, I'd run into him again and I was a mess, and he was like, you should be an actor. I think you'd be a good actor. And he had seen me in some school play when we were younger, and he said, I remember you doing that. You were great. You should be an actor. So I was like, okay, I'll be an actor. And I went to his acting class, and then I was an actor.
How long were you in this acting class for?
Before I worked, about a year.
How do you make that jump from going to acting class to actually working?
There were different tiers. There was like the beginner's class, and then the intermediate class, and the advanced class, and the master's class. And everybody in the master's class was like legit working actors. So you kind of wanted to be in that master's class. And I was in the beginner's class for a year, and I really liked the teacher, but I got a note. I like put a scene up, and he said, okay, that was fine. I want to see it again so that I can really give you a good critique. And I was just like, motherfucker, if you can't give me a critique, move me into the next class, because maybe I'm not a beginner anymore. You know, that was my feeling. And I think I then was like, you know what? I'm just going to go do this and learn while I do it, like for real. And I got a headshot made, and I got a magazine that I think it was called Backstage. I don't know if that exists anymore. And in the back, there were like little like classifieds that was like agent looking for talent, like that kind of thing. Sent a couple people my headshot. One dude called me, and he was like, I'll be your agent. The dude was like, his office was his apartment. You know, it wasn't like William Morris where you're like in a big professional building or anything. But however that worked, he like immediately got me, like, for the next week, 2 auditions in a day. He was like, so Monday or whatever day it was, you're going to go here, and you have an audition in Santa Monica, and then you have an audition in Burbank. I go, and I'm reading for Melrose Place. I do my audition. I leave. He calls me and says, they want to hire you. You did great. So I'm like, wow, that's crazy. I'm going to the audition in Burbank. He calls me again, and he goes, you're not in the SAG union yet. To get into the union, if you're not in the union and a producer wants to hire you, they have to do something called Taft-Hartley, where they like pay for you, say, cost them money. They were unwilling to do that, so I didn't get to do that job. My next audition was for Boy Meets World, and I went into that and left, and he was like, don't leave, they want to see you again. So I like hung out for an hour at Disney, did another audition, and he called and he was like, they want you and they will pay for your union dues. This was day 1 of auditioning. So I had 2 auditions. basically got both of them, but one of them turned into like a real job. I did Boy Meets World for 3 years.
Well, I mean, what was it about acting that clicked for you?
A little bit of it was in the moment of acting, I am no longer dealing with the issues that I'm dealing with as Ethan. So there is a magical moment that I can detach from myself and exist as this other guy who doesn't have all the fucking baggage and mental bullshit that I have. That's really nice. And other than that, you get paid a shitload of money and like people think it's cool and you get a little notoriety. And there's another aspect where when you're viewed as that thing, you're not being viewed as yourself. So that's like another bonus.
Is it safe to say it was an escape?
For sure. It's all an escape. Being an actor is a great escape. Actually acting is a great escape. All of it is like, hey, I don't have to be myself right now, which is really nice.
Were you still using drugs at that point?
I don't think at that point I was using drugs. I was drinking, but it was like a moderate period in my life. I was like really putting my best foot forward to do this thing. I didn't want to show up hungover. I certainly wasn't, in the beginning ever using drugs or alcohol at work.
Was that the end of your drug use?
No, it got much worse.
What caused it to get much worse?
I don't know.
What kind of drugs were you doing?
Cocaine, heroin, a lot of pills. Was
it teenage experimenting or was it more than that?
No, I think I'd done some teenage experimenting up until that point, but when I came back to really using drugs, it could have just been that the allure of escapism had worn off with just being an actor, and I needed an escape from that too, maybe. The entire time I was using drugs, I worked consistently. I never missed a day of work. Like, I remember having this, like, there was at one point in the late 90s, a heroin drought in LA, and I don't know if some shipment got busted. I don't know the geopolitical reasons for this, but there was a minute where there was like, you go down to the alleys downtown, you go down to Bonnie Brand 6, there's no heroin, right? My dude, who was like more of a delivery service, has nothing, doesn't know anybody who has anything. I spent nights like in sketchy places looking for it. It's just gone. Like it's dried up in LA. And so I'm at work kicking heroin, sick, but I didn't miss a day of work. Like, I remember really patting myself on the back quite often. Like, man, I did a lot of dumb, stupid shit, but I never missed a day of work. This was like something I took pride in at meetings, talking about my experience, but I never missed a day of work,
So acting was an escape. The drugs were an escape.
Yeah.
There was no part of you that was like, hey, I left acting school and now I'm working. There was no confidence to take from that at all?
As an actor, sure.
No, but as Ethan?
No. I don't think I ever really had much confidence, like for myself.
What point did you get sober?
2001. So I was like 23.
And what brought that about?
I started to see a girl and I started to think about my life. I don't think I ever had really thought about the future in depth. It was all very much just like, well, if I can just keep doing this, this is fine. So the future is kind of meaningless. And so now I'm seeing this girl, and it was the first girl that really meant something to me. And there were a few different things that happened, but really, I remember having to confront talking to her about my weight. I was like, in thinking about the future, I was thinking about myself and being a good partner for her. So it kind of, I'd been in and out of treatment and to rehab a number of times and in a program, but I still hadn't ever really thought long-term about the future. So it was really this moment of looking at my life and looking into the future and going like, well, what do I want for myself? And having long-term goals about the future that I hadn't ever had,
And she was the impetus for this.
I don't like to put it on her because really she did nothing but be like a cool girl who liked me for me, which I think was unusual. And
Was that the first time you felt worthy of being loved?
you know, I don't think I felt worthy of being loved. I think I felt like I was fooling her. I think I felt like she couldn't see me, and that's the only reason she was interested in me. So like when I went to talk to her about my weight, I felt like I was telling her a secret. I felt like I was revealing something that she was unaware of. This is objectively impossible. It's a very hard thing to put into words because I was the size I was.
How heavy were you?
550. So this is not a secret, you know? This is not something that like I'm keeping as a secret, but I felt that it was. It's a hard thing to really grasp. It's a hard thing for me to even put into words because it's insane. It's truly insane. But that was, you know, talking about it was my vulnerability, I guess. It was as though like the minute I talked to her about it, she's going to become aware. This is not true because when I've talked to her about it long after that, she was like, no, I loved you and I'm really glad you made these decisions because we got to stay together. I don't think we would have had you not changed.
What caused you to want to even have that conversation with her in the first place?
Thinking about the future, thinking about what I want, thinking about having kids and having a life and like, what kind of life do I want? I'd never had these thoughts.
So how does that conversation go?
I think I was in Romania and I decided to have the talk with her over the phone. I said like, I want to do something about my weight. I don't know what to do. And she said, oh, okay, well, I'll have something ready for you when you get back. Like, don't even worry about it. For now, I think she told me to stop eating bread while I was in Romania. She was like, just see if you can do that. If you can do that, then you can do whatever I have set up for you when you get back. And I was like, that's it? And she was like, yeah, don't really worry about it too much. So I did that, got back to LA. She picked me up. She was like, so I went and saw this nutritionist. He has this program. It's a liquid diet. You can do it for 1 month. You can do it for 2 months. And let's see how you do. And I was like, great, I'll just do whatever you tell me to do because I don't know what to do.
Was this the first time that you were invested in changing for yourself?
Very first.
Even more so than when you got sober?
Yeah, I think it's what's kept me sober. Sobriety ebbed and flowed with how much I could function, how effective the drugs were, my ability to get out of bed. And so there would be periods where, and I had congestive heart failure, which would start in my feet and swell up my legs and eventually got to my midsection. And I kept being told, like, you got to get off drugs. And so I'd go, okay. And I'd go like a week without drugs and I'd just be sick in my house until the one day that I felt a little bit better. And then I'd start using drugs again. That was kind of my reasoning for getting sober. There was no staying sober for very long.
So you come back from Romania. She starts you on this liquid diet. How much weight did you lose?
80 pounds.
How long did that take?
2 months.
Were you exercising?
No.
So this was all diet-based?
Yeah.
So where does it go from there?
Then I had to go back to Romania. And she like had this program of like, here's all the stuff you can eat, rough portions, and just eat this stuff. And then I was in Romania just doing that, and I continued to lose weight. And then I got back, and I was like, I'm really fatigued doing this diet. Like, is there another diet I can do? And that kind of led me down the path of trying lots of different diets. Atkins, keto, paleo when it first came out, 30 for 30, Fit for Life, The Zone, South Beach.
But it was all diet. There was no exercise, or was there?
I started seeing a personal trainer in 2004. That was like my first experience exercising. So then there was little exercise in there. And in 2010, I started riding bikes and like seriously, like every day I would ride a bike. So yes, there was.
So in that 6 years between 2004, 2010, you're trying every single diet and
trying them all. Yeah.
And exercising a little bit or just.
I mean, in 2004, I started to see a dude, and for a year I was exercising a good amount, fair amount of exercise. There was definitely exercise in there too.
Was your weight constantly going down, or was it up and down? Or
Up and down. I never was like 500 pounds again. Like I never really went above 400. Once I got under 400, I never went above 400.
And what's the lowest that you got?
200.
And what got you there?
Riding bikes.
We say riding bikes, you mean like how often were you riding bikes?
I was riding about 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. And then on my Sunday, I would do a leisure ride that would be like 3 hours.
Were you working at this point?
This was right after My Name is Earl. And in the midst of this like bike riding obsession, I did like 3 or 4 pilots, but that would be like a week of work or 2 weeks of work.
What age are you?
Close to 30, maybe 30, 28, 30. I'm not, this was like 2010.
So 2010, you get down to 200 pounds, but you're still on this diet roller coaster.
Yeah, I mean, when I was, cyclist, like what I was doing, want to be as light as possible. So I was like basically anorexic, not eating a whole lot, and just fucking cardio all day long.
I've heard you say that a 2017 TED Springfield talk by Dr. Mike Israetel was the key to getting you to stop with the diets.
Yeah. Now, listen, I consider what I'm doing right now a diet. There are different definitions. Like sometimes my calories are restricted and sometimes they're not. And like it kind of depends on what I'm looking to do that year or for work or whatever, how much of my abs I want visible, But I looked at food very differently after I saw that TED Talk. Up until that point, I was totally convinced I was allergic to carbohydrates. One of the things my wife first did was like have me stop eating bread. This was super helpful. I didn't understand the mechanics of what was happening, but I just realized like, oh, when I didn't eat bread, I lost weight. Later with like Atkins and keto, I was just convinced that people, there's a book called Grain Brain, which talks about how like people are in a constant fog because of grains. And I really put the burden of responsibility on the food, not taking the responsibility for myself. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I've watched the TED Talk. It's very straightforward. And his thesis is basically it doesn't matter so much what you eat, it's how much you eat. And it's not so much when you eat. It's just, again, how much you eat and sort of redefining your relationship with food.
It's one of these really silly things that when I watch it, because I've watched it 10 times, I watched the first 4 times I watched it, I was like angry at him. Like, fuck this guy, I'm going to watch it again just to like hate watch it. And I feel like when I watch it now, because I have watched it kind of recently again and gone back and just gone like, it feels very common sense to me watching it now. And I imagine that many people could watch it and go like, yeah, well, I knew that, like this is not shocking. But I think if you've been into diets for a while, there's so much data out there that is like, if you eat white rice, you're screwed. If you eat brown rice, you're screwed. There's so many people trying to make money by offering silver bullets that like you can become inundated with that stuff to the point where his TED Talk is no longer common sense. His TED Talk is radical. And that was my experience with it.
You had gone so far down the diet rabbit hole that having someone explain something which is very straightforward.
Yeah.
I mean, he even says, 75% of your diet can be health food and the rest kind of whatever.
It was mind-blowing for me because I believed that I could not eat carbohydrates. I believed that. And I believed that the only source of carbohydrates that were acceptable for me to eat were like broccoli or cabbage or lettuce or something like that.
Well, how extreme did that go?
Yeah, so I'm on this diet. I'm traveling with a buddy, and I wind up at a dinner with Steven Spielberg, Tom Hanks, Leonardo DiCaprio, Roberto Benigni, and his wife. And I am for sure the odd man out at this table. And Roberto Benigni is saying like, welcome to my city, Rome. this is the best restaurant in my city. I'm so happy to have you all here. And then the courses are coming out, and it's like prosciutto and cheese and tomatoes and this. And he's like watching everybody eat it and making sure they're having this magical experience. And then comes the pasta. And I kind of just push my plate a little bit up and like lean on my elbows. Like I'm now going to watch people eat this because I am allergic to pasta. And he says, why are you not eating? And I say, oh, I can't eat pasta. And he says, oh, but you must. It's the best in my city. So now it's the best pasta in a city that is renowned for pasta. And like, I can see there's like some tension there. Like, no, you can't not eat this. And I say, no, you don't understand. Like, and in my head, I'm going like, do I explain to him that like, if I eat this, I could wind up at a crack house later tonight? Like, that's what I'm thinking in my head. Like, I'm allergic to pasta. Like, I can't, it will fuck my body up. And he's like, you must take a bite. And Spielberg's like leaning over going, eat the fucking pasta, Ethan. And I'm like, no, guys, I can't do it. I can't do it. And he forks a piece of penne and is thrusting it at me, standing on his chair. I don't know if I've invented him standing on his chair because he did that at the Academy Awards, or he actually did that. He certainly stood up and he was thrusting a speared penny at my face. And I'm just going, I can't. And I didn't eat it. And it fucking ruined the vibe of the dinner. Like, he was offended and Spielberg was disappointed. And I was sitting here going like, no, I can't. I'm not gonna eat the pasta. I desperately wish I had, but I don't know. I think belief is a powerful thing. If we believe something is harmful, there's like this scientific studies on belief that prove that belief plays some factor in how we live our lives.
I sit here and I listen to that story, and obviously you telling it after the fact, there is a level of entertainment, but it's also really heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I mean, what was going on with you internally?
I was on it. I believed that, I don't know if I believed that everyone couldn't eat pasta, but I certainly believed that I couldn't. And this is not a belief I hold today. I don't eat much pasta today because I don't eat a lot of fat, and I find pasta without at least some olive oil to be pretty boring, but it's a great source of carbohydrates.
And then along comes Dr. Mike Israetel and says, well, eat whatever you want. It just comes down to how much. And
yeah, and I had been struggling for a while with trying to have visible muscles. When I was riding a bike, I got very thin and I didn't like how I looked. So then I wanted to put on muscle, and I basically gained a shitload of weight over a number of years and was back to about 400 pounds, lifting weights every day. And then I was like sick of being heavy again. So I started dieting, and the diet I know how to do is keto at that point. And I have this belief that I'm allergic to carbohydrates. And if I stop eating carbohydrates, I'll lose weight. And so I'm lifting weights and doing keto and losing weight. But I was just getting proportionally smaller. None of my muscles were becoming revealed, though, despite lifting weights every day. And so I started doing DEXA scans, which is like the best version of seeing how much lean tissue and how much fat you have on you, and how much of weight you can lose or need to lose. And in doing that over the course of 6 months, 40% of what I was losing was muscle. And so this was a very hard thing to wrap my head around, because my desire was to not lose any muscle. And when I saw Mike's TED Talk and I started looking at the way because bodybuilders are constantly either eating too much or eating too little, depending on where they're at for a show. And I was like, oh, I'm trying to lose weight way too quick. That's not helpful. But I'm also like withholding this whole food source that I don't need to withhold, that's going to give me more energy in the gym to lift more weights, to retain more muscle mass. And that was kind of like a complete paradigm shift for me.
We've talked a lot about the physical side of this, but I want to talk for a second about the emotional and the mental effects of being heavy? What do you see when you look in the mirror?
It really depends on, and I don't know the factors that contribute to this, but it depends on where my head is at that day, because I can either see somebody that I'm really proud of, or I can see somebody with a lot of physical problems, and it just depends. And I don't know which version I'm going to get every day.
Do you find that people treat you differently when you're heavy versus when you're not as heavy?
Not really. If they do, I'm not aware of it. I find that I'm treated pretty much the same. I don't notice that there's a big difference. And today, if somebody called me fat, I would probably go like, yeah, you're right.
On your Instagram a while back, you told a story about being in the Starbucks line and having your order memorized so that when you got to the front of the line, there was no time wasted, there was no attention put on you. But your chosen career, people are looking at you. Obviously, you've made a tremendous change. Are you more comfortable now with the focus still being on your physical condition?
No. And I would say the thing that was super helpful about acting is it put a divider up. So for me, at least, when somebody was staring at me, I could at least convince myself that they could be staring at me potentially because they recognized me from something. That's super helpful mentally, to always just knowing they're looking at me because I'm fat. You know, like wearing a white t-shirt at the beach is something I did. It made me more comfortable. It's not actually hiding anything. Being an actor is, in one respect, exposing everything, but it's exposing it in a way that deflects the attention from me. So it was a shield in a way.
Was there any part of you, from a professional standpoint, that was concerned about making a physical transformation like this? Were you scared to lose work, potentially?
No. Look, the reality is I've been doing this for 30 years. If I never got to work again, I couldn't say that like, oh my God, look at what I've given up. Who gives a shit? I've got adult kids. My oldest daughter's engaged to be married. I could be a grandparent any day. Not literally, like it would be a year from now, I guess. You know, but I've got kids in their 20s. My wife was 19 when she had her first kid. So, you know, I really enjoy acting. I enjoy it. If I was never allowed to act again, it would not be some tragedy in my life.
Have there been any instances working professionally where that self-conscious, heavier Ethan has sort of clashed with your professional responsibilities?
Signing onto The Wolf of Wall Street, my agent said everybody's agreeing to full nudity. And at the time, I was very much like, this is Martin Scorsese. Martin Scorsese wants you to do something. You do whatever he wants you to do. It doesn't matter. It's going to look great. Even if it's heartbreakingly mortifying for me, he's going to have a purpose. It's going to be good. And then when it came down to it, the scenes where I would have been nude were in orgies. And I had a lot of different stuff. Look, I can't honestly tell you that it wasn't just that I was embarrassed, but I was rationalizing it by going like, I've got 4 daughters. I don't need to be in a movie doing graphic sexual stuff with a girl. That's nothing I ever, need them to see. So now I have 2 reasons to try and avoid being nude. And I was able to come up with a good alternative where it was funny. Like, I don't even know what they used, but we did a few different versions. One, I'm playing cards with a guy. Another one, I'm sleeping. Another one, I'm reading amidst this orgy. I don't know. I mean, I would not have felt comfortable doing it, but I would have done it had he said, no, I need you to do this. What
has been the physical effects of gaining and losing so much weight on your body?
Well, I have flat feet. I've always had flat feet. I think I was first made aware of my flat feet when I was like 10. But I have this almost cartoonish image of flat feet and fallen arches due to so much weight over so much time where it just kind of smashed my feet down. I don't know if that's true or if it was just something I was born with. That's an effect. I've had knee surgery. I had it when I was much lighter, but I'm sure I did the damage to my knee from being heavy for so long. You're standing around a lot as an actor. My feet hurt a lot. I mean, this seems like a really stupid thing to be complaining about. I imagine a construction worker's feet also hurt at the end of the day, or a waiter's feet probably hurt at the end of the day. I will say that quite often as an actor, you're put in uncomfortable shoes that you haven't properly broken in. And so like standing in those shoes, your feet hurt. This is nothing I'm so worried about, but I think more than anything, those are the things that I think about, like long-term damage. Maybe one day I'll have to have a hip surgery or a hip replacement or something like that. But like as far as my heart goes, I've had radioactive stress tests done. I've had my heart ultrasound a number of times. I've had calcium tests done. I have low cholesterol. Like I'm a healthy guy.
You've said that billowing excess skin is an issue that's not discussed enough.
It's not discussed really at all. And I've done deep dives on this. I have heard about I've never seen any like evidence of this, but I have heard stories about like a guy lost 100 pounds and did it in this way and never had excess skin. Okay. I've seen no evidence of that. And I talked to a lot of people who have had or are going to have massive weight loss. And one for one, they've all had excess skin. The skin is an organ. It's designed to be elastic so that we can put on extra weight because, your body wants to store fuel. It's like a savings account. And then when you use it, the skin, because it's elastic, goes back to whatever size it was before. If you gain so much weight and keep the weight for a long period of time, then the skin goes like, well, we now need to be able to be elastic from this new point. So let's grow to this size and have this be our new set point. And that's what happens. And so I don't know what the exact numbers are, but like if you are overweight for a long period of time, then when you lose the weight, the skin had a new set point. So its elasticity was from that larger point. It's not going away. There's nothing you can do. This is like going like, I want to diet off a finger. It's not going to happen. So you either live with the billowing excess skin or you have it cut off. Those are your options.
Have you had skin cut off?
Yeah. It's awful.
And then what happens to that skin?
I wanted to tan it and make presents for my friends. This was a repulsive idea to everybody I mentioned it to. The doctor and my wife were both not into this idea. And I remember having my wife's assistant contact tanneries, and then we got a call from the FBI, and it was like a whole thing. Like, why are you really interested in tanning human skin? And the doctor wouldn't let me have it. There was a guy who I was talking to about having him hijack the surgery and stealing the skin because the doctor said he was not allowed to give it to me, which I feel still a little bit perturbed about. It is mine, after all. You get your wisdom teeth when you have those removed. But in the end, my wife was like, you guys are morons. Nobody's robbing your surgery. And the skin is then donated to research or to people with burns. It's put to use, apparently. But yeah, they cut the skin off you and then sew you back together.
One of the things that I've heard you say is key to making a physical transformation or physiological transformation like you have is, yes, the method is important, but undoing the bad habits and looking at what caused the weight gain and addressing how you arrived there in the first place is the most important part.
Yeah, I believe that.
How have you solved for that in your own life?
I have to kind of fight against my instincts quite a bit. You could call it depression or apathy or any number of things, but I could be content to sit and do nothing. So I have to like really stay on top of being active, force myself to get activity if it's not natural than some kind of ancillary activity on an elliptical machine or force myself to walk around the block a few times. I have had to go through and make an inventory of my life of all the different places where my compulsion to eat would be harmful to my goals or to myself, and try to get rid of those and just avoid them. Like I don't go to fast food, and I don't really eat while I'm watching TV, and I don't eat out of boredom. And it's just things like that where even if I eat too many calories in a day, I want them being put to good use. So I'm going to be a little extra active.
Has there been any therapy?
Not really. I mean, I talk about it with my wife a lot.
I mean, can you trace it back to that day at your grandparents' house when you were 5 years old? I mean, can you make that linear look back?
Not all the way there. I mean, the thing that I definitely don't do that I remember that was the first time I did it was hiding food consumption. So that is off the table. I say that, but I still have certain things, like I take all my food with me when I travel. A very easy thing for me to make is a sandwich. I can control everything. I can know exactly the energy in the sandwich because I've made it. I know how many calories the bread has. I know how many carbohydrates it has. I know that the meat is not injected with sugar. The first few times I was sitting in an airport and like, oh, I'm hungry, I'm going to get a sandwich out of my bag, I still had this like, God, I hope nobody sees me eating bread, because I had years of feeling that bread was bad, and a sandwich doesn't really seem like diet food. Am I a good example to people if I'm sitting in this airport eating a sandwich? So I still had that feeling of needing to hide it, but I'm not going to go sit in a bathroom stall and eat my sandwich. And the hiding of food would be more from like the people that I'm accountable to, like my wife. I'm not going to hide food from her. She doesn't give a shit if I eat a sandwich.
The other thing that you have mentioned as being important or has contributed towards your success is having goals. How have those goals changed, and how important is readjusting goals and finding new motivation to keep pushing this down the line for you?
I wanted to have visible abs. Like, this is something I worked for a long time as a goal. Then I have visible abs. Then it's like, okay, now I got to keep my visible abs. But at the same time, that's constantly dieting. And so being realistic, where like when I go on maintenance, I still have visible abs, but they're not as sharp as they are when I diet down to like 8% body fat. But like the idea of maintaining 8% body fat for a long time is really, really hard, and not the way that I'm interested in living my life. So my goals get adjusted. Like, I definitely want to have sleek, super defined six-pack at least once every year, whether that's for the summer or for the new year or what. I don't know. I can set that goal and then work towards it.
Would you say that your goals are more outwardly physical, or is there sort of a mental, emotional, like how do I feel component to it?
My goal now is just really working on not feeling guilt associated with food, not eating compulsively, understanding how much I need, and like staying in that range so that I'm not doing things that are harmful to myself. That's really my goal now. My goal now is just like having long-term success. And so I set smaller goals to facilitate that.
Tell me about the kill your clone concept.
Kill your clone is a thing that comes out of a martial arts training called Sayak, which is a type of Kali. And I first learned about it doing a television show with a guy named Tom Kyer, where I was actually playing a character inspired by him. And kill your clone is the idea that every night you meet your clone from 24 hours in the past. So your job over the course of the day is to improve yourself in some way so that you're able to beat your clone, because your clone is coming to kill you. And so anything you do, if it's reading or training in some way, this is really comes out of a combatives thing. So it's about like getting some practice in so that when your clone comes to fight you, you kill it. But really, it could be any way that you improve yourself. So long as you're some tiny little bit better than you were a day before, you're going to beat the fight with your clone.
Tell me about American Glutton.
American Glutton is really just talking about the area of diets and weight loss. And like, I have all manner of people, and people who lost weight, people who want to lose weight, people who have never really thought about weight. And I want to talk to them and go like, okay, well, what's that like? Tell me about your life. And what are you doing that is just working for you? Because I can't relate to that totally. So I'm interested in hearing about it. And I also have people who are advocating for diets that I might have done and didn't work for me, but I'm interested to hear from them because maybe it will work for somebody else.
Is American Glutton a way for you to keep yourself accountable?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I would hope that my main source of accountability is just enjoying this. And so I'm doing it for myself. And then after that, thinking about being 85 years old with my wife is number 2. And like watching my grandchildren grow up if I ever get some. But then also, you know, I think like, especially, I'm not an objectivist, but I do think there's some truth to like when Ayn Rand says like all human action comes from a place of selfishness, and her selfishness is like slightly different than being only consumed with what you want. It's being interested in what you want. So what you want could be benefiting somebody else. So I think about like with things like loose skin that was never like when I first lost a bunch of weight, I was like, when's this going away? Nobody mentioned this loose skin stuff to me. That's a big deal. It's a very hard thing to confront when you think you're just going to lose weight and everything's going to be great. It's not always great because I haven't met one person that's just gone like, yeah, I love having loose skin. You know, maybe those people who get hung by hooks, have you seen these people? Maybe they would love loose skin. I don't know. I should actually talk to them. If loose skin could be pretty cool, if you like actually made sails down your back and got hung from them. I was not into it. So it's having conversations that are not necessarily typical. They're not like, I have no interest in like everybody needs to lose weight and be healthy. Like, I think that that's bullshit, you know? And so like, I want to talk about that. I want people to feel like they can have whatever fucking goal they want, you know? So that's my altruism. And certainly it helps fire my accountability.
How do you define success?
Achieving something you set out to achieve.
Would you say that you're successful on your terms?
Yeah, I feel very successful.
How do you define failure?
Failure is not achieving something you set out to succeed at.
Looking back on your life, whether it's personally or professionally, can you see a failure that ultimately set you up for success?
Yeah, I mean, I see so many failures. I see tons of failures. I do have the thought like, what if my grandparents just like said, you're doing great, have as much lasagna as you want, and nobody ever, you know, stuck my attention on my body? What would that have been like? I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe I still develop all the mental garbage that I have now and I'm no better off. So I don't regret anything.
How do you define happiness?
I find happiness is very similar to success, is a state of accomplishment at succeeding at something you set out to succeed at. So it could be, you can glean that from many different places.
What would you say to 18-year-old Ethan?
Don't panic.
Meaning?
Just fucking stop worrying about everything. It's going to be okay.
How would you describe what you do for a living?
I think the thing that I enjoy most about life is being a husband and father. I think really that's what I do for a living.
Ethan Suplee, thank you for speaking with me.
Thanks for having me, Noah. It was my pleasure.
The Days Between is a production of Noah Abrams Studio. Story editing by Andrew Henry. Mixing and mastering by Todd Stapera and Reference Recording. Website design by John Fisher. Theme music is by Evo. The Days Between can be found online at www.thedaysbetweenpodcast.com and on Instagram at The Days Between Podcast. My name is Noah Abrams. Thanks for listening.